Robert Brennan adjusted his tie one last time before stepping into the Whitlow dining room. The mahogany table stretched before him like a battlefield, its polished surface reflecting the crystal chandelier above. 6 chairs surrounded it, but everyone knew which one was his. The 4th seat, positioned just far enough from the head to make a point. Well, Delmont Whitlow's voice boomed from the far end. The man's silver hair was perfectly styled, his navy suit pressed to perfection. Look who decided to join us after all. Robert pulled out his chair, the wood scraping against the hardwood floor. Wouldn't miss it, he replied. Be grateful we even gave you a seat, Delmont said, cutting into his steak with deliberate precision. Most men in your position wouldn't be welcome at this table. The other guests, Delmont's business associates and their wives, laughed awkwardly. Robert had met them before at various functions, but their names blurred together in his mind. Tonight, their faces held the same expression, polite interest mixed with barely hidden discomfort. Father, please. Romy's voice was smooth as silk, but Robert caught the warning underneath. She sat to Delmont's right, her blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon. The emerald dress brought out her eyes, the same eyes that had captivated him 6 years ago. Now they looked right through him. Robert reached for his wine glass. The crystal felt cool against his fingers. But something was wrong. The scent hit him immediately, bitter and sharp beneath the Cabernet's usual richness. He frowned and set the glass down without drinking. Is something wrong with your wine, dear? Marlo Whitlow's voice carried across the table. Romy's mother was thinner than usual, her cheekbones sharp beneath carefully applied makeup. You haven't touched it. It smells off, Robert said. Delmont snorted. Everything's wrong with you lately, isn't it? First, you insult my daughter with your paranoia. Now you're complaining about wine that costs more than your monthly income. I'm not complaining. I'm being careful, Robert said. Careful? Romy leaned forward, her fingers sliding across the white tablecloth toward his glass. You're overthinking again, Robert. You always do this. She pushed the wine closer to him. The liquid sloshed gently against the sides. Maybe I should taste it, Marlo said, her hand already reaching across the table. Mother, don't. Romy started, but Marlo had already lifted the glass to her lips. Wait, don't. Romy's voice cracked like a whip. Too late. Marlo had already taken a sip. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her face twisted in confusion and disgust. This taste. She coughed once, then again. The sound grew wet and harsh. Something's wrong. The glass slipped from her fingers, red wine spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. Marlo doubled over, her body convulsing as violent coughs racked her frame. Call 911. Robert shot to his feet, his chair toppling backward. Now chaos erupted around the table. One of the guests was already on her phone, her voice shaking as she spoke to the operator. Delmont stood frozen, his face pale. The business associates backed away from the table, their wives clutching their purses. Robert knelt beside Marlo's chair. Her lips were turning blue, foam speckling the corners of her mouth. Romy, get the car, he ordered. We're not waiting for the ambulance. But when he looked up, Romy stood perfectly still. Her face was a mask of shock. Or was it something else? Her green eyes met his for just a moment before she looked away. The emergency room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Robert paced the waiting area, his shoes squeaking against the waxed linoleum. 3 hours had passed since they'd rushed Marlo through those double doors, and still no word. Mr. Brennan. A doctor emerged from the treatment area, pulling off his gloves. Mrs. Whitlow is stable, but her condition is serious. The toxicology results show she ingested a significant amount of antifreeze. We've started treatment, but there's been damage to her kidneys and liver. Antifreeze. Robert's voice sounded foreign to his own ears. How was that possible? We're required to report suspected poisoning cases to the police. The doctor continued. They'll want to speak with you. Through the glass doors, Robert could see Delmont in the hallway, his face red, He gestured wildly at two uniformed officers. His voice carried even through the thick glass. "That man tried to kill my wife. He was the only one who didn't drink the wine." Robert's stomach dropped. He watched as Delmont pointed directly at him through the window. The officers approached him 20 minutes later. Detective Issel Monroe was younger than he'd expected, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and intelligent brown eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Brennan, I'm Detective Monroe. I understand you were present when Mrs. Whitlow became ill." "I was. We all were. Mr. Whitlow claims you refused to drink the wine that poisoned his wife. Is that accurate?" Robert chose his words carefully. "The wine smelled wrong to me. I didn't drink it, and you had access to this wine before dinner. I arrived just before we sat down. I never touched the bottle or anyone else's glass." Detective Monroe made notes in a small pad. "What's your relationship with the Whitlow family?" "I'm married to their daughter, Romy." "And how would you describe that relationship?" Robert glanced toward the waiting area where Romy sat with her father. She was crying silently, a tissue pressed to her eyes. But something about her posture felt rehearsed. "Complicated," he said finally. The questioning continued for another hour. Detective Monroe was thorough but fair, asking about his work, his finances, his marriage. Robert answered honestly, but he could feel the net tightening around him with each question. When they finally released him, Delmont was waiting in the parking lot. The man's face was purple with rage. "You think you're clever, don't you?" Delmont spat. "Poisoning my wife, and playing innocent." "I didn't poison anyone," Robert replied. "The hell you didn't. You've been nothing but trouble since you wormed your way into this family. A nobody with a dead brother and a struggling business." Delmont stepped closer, close enough that Robert could smell his cologne. "You won't get away with this. I'll make sure of it." Robert met his stare without flinching. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." The drive home was silent. Romy stared out the passenger window, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. When they pulled into their driveway, she finally spoke. "How could you do this to us?" Robert turned off the engine. "Do what exactly?" "You know what." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Why, Robert, why would you hurt my mother?" "I didn't hurt anyone." She laughed bitterly. "Everyone saw you refuse the wine. Everyone heard my father. The police, the neighbors, they all think you're guilty. And what do you think?" Romy was quiet for a long moment. When she finally looked at him, her eyes were dry. "I think my mother is dying because of you." She got out of the car and walked toward the house, leaving Robert alone in the darkness. Robert couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Romy's even breathing beside him. How had they gotten here? They had everything, and now it had all gone so wrong. 6 years ago, he'd been a different man, broken maybe, but hopeful. His brother's death had nearly destroyed him. That car crash on a rainy Tuesday night. The phone call that changed everything. Tom had been coming home from work, taking the back roads to avoid traffic. They said he died instantly when the truck ran the red light. Robert had spent a year drowning in grief and Jack Daniels before Wyatt Cordero dragged him out of the bottle and forced him to start living again. That's when he'd met Romy. She'd been magnetic then. All golden hair and green eyes and laughter that made him forget about the empty chair at family dinners. She was everything he wasn't. Wealthy, connected, confident. When she showed interest in a struggling carpenter with calloused hands and a second-hand truck, it felt like a miracle. Their wedding had been perfect. 200 guests, an orchid arch, Romy in a designer dress that cost more than Robert made in 6 months. For a while, he believed in fairy tales. The cracks started showing in year 2. Romy began taking weekend trips for treats. She called them spa weekends with friends, spiritual healing workshops, art classes in distant cities. She always came back refreshed and distant, like she'd left part of herself somewhere else. Robert had focused on building his furniture business. He'd started small, crafting custom pieces in the garage. Word spread slowly among Asheville's wealthy residents. Robert Brennan made beautiful things that lasted forever. The business grew, but Romy grew more absent. "Maybe you should come with me next weekend," she'd suggested once, early in year 3. "The retreat center in Virginia has couples programs. I've got 3 orders to finish," he'd said, not looking up from the walnut dresser he was sanding. "Maybe next time." There was never a next time. The invitations stopped coming. Now Robert rolled over and studied his wife's profile in the darkness. Her face was peaceful in sleep, beautiful as ever. But this afternoon, when Marlowe had collapsed, he'd seen something in Romy's expression that chilled him. Not shock or fear, resignation. Like she'd been expecting it. The thought made him sick. Downstairs, his phone buzzed with a text from Wyatt. "Heard what happened. You okay?" Robert typed back. "Not really. Want company. Tomorrow. Romy's sleeping. Be careful, man. Things are about to get ugly." Robert deleted the messages and padded downstairs to his workshop. Surrounded by half-finished furniture and the smell of wood shavings, he felt almost normal. This was his sanctuary, the one place in a house that felt truly his. He picked up a piece of cherry, what he'd been shaping into a jewelry box. The wood was warm under his hands, responding to his touch. As he worked, he thought about the dinner, the wine, the look in Romy's eyes that had been wide with shock. He decided to call Brinley. Brinley Whitlow had married into the family the same year Robert did. She'd wed Romy's younger brother Marcus in a ceremony half as lavish as Robert and Romy's. But she'd seemed genuinely happy. Where Romy was fire and drama, Brinley was steady water. She noticed things others missed. They met for coffee at a little place downtown, far from the Whitlow circle. Brinley looked tired, worry lines creasing her forehead. "How's Marlowe?" Robert asked. "Alive. The doctors say she'll recover, but it'll take time." Brinley stirred her latte absently. "Robert, I need to tell you something about Romy." His hands tightened around his coffee cup. "What about her?" "She's been different lately. The last few months, especially. Secretive. She gets phone calls. She doesn't answer them around family. Text messages that make her smile." Brinley looked up at him. "I don't think she's been going to retreats." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I called the spa in Charleston where she was supposed to be last month. They've never heard of her." Robert felt something cold settle in his stomach. "You're sure?" Brinley nodded. "I'm sorry, Robert. I know this isn't what you want to hear." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken truths heavy between them. "There's something else," Brinley said quietly. "Last night, after you left the hospital, Romy and her father had a conversation in the hallway. I couldn't hear all of it, but I heard her say he should have drunk the wine. When Delmont asked what she meant, she just shook her head." Robert's blood turned to ice. "Are you certain?" "I know what I heard," Robert said. That afternoon, Robert found Wyatt at his auto shop. His best friend was under the hood of a Mustang, grease staining his coveralls. Wyatt was the only person who'd known Robert before Romy, the only one who remembered him as something other than the poor guy who married rich. "Heard of the town villain now," Wyatt said without looking up. "Word travels fast. Delmont's been calling everyone he knows, says he tried to murder his wife." Wyatt straightened up and wiped his hands on a rag. "Of course, anyone who knows you knows that's bull. Thanks for the vote of confidence." "So what really happened?" Robert told him everything. The wine, the strange smell, Marlowe's collapse, Romy's odd behavior. Wyatt listened without interruption, his expression growing darker. "You think your wife tried to poison you," Wyatt said. The words hung in the air like a physical thing. Saying it out loud made it real. "I don't know what to think." "Well, I do." Wyatt tossed the rag aside. "That woman's been playing games with you for years. All those retreats and spiritual workshops. You ever see any evidence of them? Pictures, brochures, New Age crap lying around the house?" Robert realized he hadn't. No, because there isn't any. She's been seeing someone else, man. Has been for a while now. You know this for certain. I know women like her. Rich, bored, married to a man who won't kiss her ass every second of the day. Wyatt's voice hardened. She wanted you gone, Robert. The only question is why she tried to kill you at a family dinner with witnesses. Robert thought about Romy pushing the wine glass toward him. Her strange insistence that he drink it, the way she'd shouted for Marlowe to stop, but not until it was too late. Maybe she panicked, saw me refuse it and pushed too hard. Or maybe she wanted it to look like an accident. Rich wife's husband dies suddenly. She inherits everything, and plays the grieving widow. The word widow made Robert's skin crawl. I need proof. Then we'll get it. But Robert, Wyatt gripped his shoulder. You need to be smart about this. Delmont has money and influence. You're already fighting an uphill battle. That night, Robert watched Romy get ready for bed. She moved through her routine like a dancer, removing her jewelry, brushing her hair, applying night cream to her face. She'd done the same thing every night for 6 years, but tonight he saw it differently. Every gesture felt calculated, performed. The police want to interview me again tomorrow, she said, meeting his eyes in the mirror. What will you tell them? The truth, that you've been acting strange lately. Paranoid. Angry. She turned to face him. I'm scared of you. Robert felt like she'd slapped him. Scared of me. You refused to drink the wine. Robert, everyone saw it. And now my mother is. Her voice broke convincingly. How do you think that looks? It looks like I didn't want to be poisoned. It looks like you knew something was wrong with it. They stared at each other across the bedroom. 6 years of marriage, and Robert felt like he was looking at a stranger. Romy, he said quietly, did you poison that wine? For just a moment, her mask slipped. He saw something flicker in her green eyes. Calculation. Maybe even amusement. Then it was gone, replaced by hurt and outrage. How dare you ask me that? It's a simple question. It's an evil question. You're my husband. You're supposed to protect me, not accuse me of. She turned away, her shoulders shaking. I can't believe this is what we've become. Robert didn't comfort her. He couldn't. Now, when he was starting to understand exactly what they'd become. 2 weeks later, Robert learned what it meant to be a social pariah. The police cleared him. They had no evidence, no motive they could prove in court. But Asheville's wealthy community had already passed judgment. The cancellation started immediately. 3 custom furniture orders disappeared overnight. The 4th, a dining room set for the Hensley family, came with an apologetic phone call. I'm sorry, Robert. You understand how it looks. My wife is friends with Romy, and she's just devastated by what happened to her mother. Robert understood perfectly. Delmont had money, influence, and a network of wealthy friends who valued loyalty above truth. He'd been methodical in his character assassination. Lunch meetings, quiet phone calls, carefully worded suggestions about Robert's troubled state of mind. He's dangerous, Robert heard one of their neighbors say to another during a chance encounter at the grocery store. Romy's afraid to be alone with him. The woman glanced at Robert and quickly looked away, pushing her cart toward the produce section. Heck, I'd be afraid to be home with him too. Romy played her role perfectly. She flinched when he entered rooms, kept her distance at public events, spoke to him in a careful tone people used around wild animals. To anyone watching, she was the devoted wife standing by her troubled husband while fearing for her life. You should see someone, she suggested one morning over breakfast. A therapist. People would understand if you were getting help. Help for what? Your anger issues. Your paranoia. She spread jam on her toast with deliberate precision. Everyone knows you've been under stress since your brother died. Robert's hand tightened around his coffee mug. Tom's death was off limits. They'd established that rule years ago. Except now she was using it as a weapon. Don't. I'm trying to help you, Robert. If you admitted you have a problem, the only problem I have is living with a liar. Romy's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You're scaring me. This isn't the man I married." "No," Robert said quietly. "It isn't." That afternoon, when Wyatt stopped by the workshop, he found Robert sanding an oak bookshelf with violent strokes. "Easy there. You're gonna sand right through it." Robert didn't slow down. "3 more orders canceled today. It'll pass. People have short memories. Delmont doesn't." Robert finally stopped, sweat beading on his forehead. "He's enjoying this." "Of course he is. You married his precious daughter, and turned out to be human instead of the perfect accessory he wanted." Wyatt picked up a piece of sandpaper and started working on the bookshelf's other side. "But here's what I don't get. Why is Romy going along with it? If she really tried to poison you, why not just divorce you quietly? Why this whole production?" Robert had been wondering the same thing. "Money, maybe. Delmont controls everything. If she leads me, she might get cut off. Or maybe she's waiting for something. Someone." The word hung between them. Robert had been avoiding the obvious conclusion, but Wyatt was right. The secret phone calls, the fake retreats, the increasing distance. Romy was having an affair. The only question was with whom. "I need to know for sure," Robert said. "Leave that to me. I know a guy who does that kind of work. I can't afford a private investigator." "You can't afford not to have one. This woman is trying to destroy your life. Robert, don't let her." 3 days later, Wyatt called with news. "Her name's not on any hotel registries in Charleston or Virginia. But my guy found something interesting. Your wife's been making regular trips to Hendersonville. Same hotel, same weekend, every month. Hendersonville was 40 minutes away. Close enough for day trips, far enough to avoid recognition. I'm gonna follow her next time she goes." "No, you're not. You're already suspicious enough. One of Delmont's friends sees you trailing your wife, and you'll be arrested for stalking." Wyatt leaned against the workbench. "Let me handle this." The next weekend, Romy announced another retreat. It's in Virginia this time. A new place that focuses on emotional healing. "How long?" "Just overnight. I'll be back Sunday afternoon." Robert nodded, not trusting himself to speak. That Saturday morning, he kissed her goodbye and watched her drive away in her silver BMW. Then he called Wyatt. "She's heading south, not north." Wyatt reported an hour later, taking the back roads to Hendersonville, just like before. "Follow her." "Already am." Robert spent the day in his workshop, trying to focus on a cabinet he was building for a client in Black Mountain, one of the few who hadn't canceled. But his mind kept wandering. What was Romy doing? Who was she with? Wyatt called at 6 that evening. "Got a name for you. Dane Ashford, tech consultant from Atlanta." They met at the Hilton, stayed until 4, then had dinner at some quiet place outside town. "How do you know his name?" "I followed him after they split up. Guys at Georgia Plates, so I ran them. He's got an apartment in Buckhead. Makes good money from what I can tell." Robert felt something twist in his chest. "How long?" "Based on the hotel records my guy pulled. At least 8 months. 8 months. While Robert had been building furniture and trying to save their marriage, Romy had been building a new life with someone else. "There's more," Wyatt continued. "I managed to get some photos. Nothing too intimate. They were careful about that, but enough to prove they're not discussing spiritual healing." That Sunday, Romy came home glowing. Her skin had a radiance that Robert knew didn't come from meditation or yoga. She moved differently, too, with a lightness he hadn't seen in years. "How was the retreat?" he asked over dinner. "Wonderful. Really transformative." She smiled at him, and for a moment, she looked like the woman he'd fallen in love with. "I think I'm finally ready to make some changes in my life." "What kind of changes?" "Just moving forward. Letting go of things that aren't working anymore." Robert cut into his steak with deliberate care. "That sounds healthy." That night, as Romy slept beside him, Robert lay awake, planning. He needed more than photos and hotel records. He needed proof of what she'd done to Marlowe, what she planned to do to him, and he thought he knew someone who might help. Monday morning, he called Brindley from his workshop. "I need to ask you a favor, a big one." They met again at the coffee shop downtown. Brindley looked nervous, glancing around like she expected to see Delmont's spies lurking behind every table. "What you're asking me to do, if they find out. I know it's dangerous, but Brindley, she tried to kill me, and she might try again." "You really believe that?" "I know it." Robert leaned forward. "You said you overheard her talking to Delmont at the hospital. What exactly did she say?" Brindley was quiet for a long moment. "She said he should have drunk the wine. When Delmont asked what she meant, she said, 'Then we wouldn't have this problem.' He told her to be quiet, that someone might hear." "Does she keep a computer at the house?" "A laptop. She takes it everywhere, never lets anyone else use it." "I need what's on that laptop." "Brindley, emails, documents, anything that proves what's going on." "You're asking me to steal from family. I'm asking you to help me stop a murderer." 3 days later, Brindley called. "I have it. Meet me at the usual place." She handed him a USB drive across the table, her hands shaking slightly. "Everything's there. I copied her entire email folder while she was in the shower." "Thank you, Robert. What I saw in those emails," Brindley's voice was barely a whisper, "she's planning to leave soon." That night, Robert sat in his workshop, reading email after email between Romy and Dane Ashford, a digital record of betrayal and planning. The early messages were careful, talking around subjects, using coded language. But as time went on, they became bolder. March 15th. "The situation at home is becoming unbearable. I think we need to be more careful." April 3rd. "I found the perfect place in Savannah. 2 bedrooms, garden view, far enough from everything to start fresh." April 22nd. "Dee says we just need to wait for the right moment. Once I'm free of this marriage, I'll have access to the trust fund. We can go anywhere. And then last month, after the wine, I'll have the house, the money, and freedom. Just need him gone." Robert read that line 3 times. There it was, in black and white, proof that Romy had planned his murder. But it was the next email that made his blood run cold. "If tonight doesn't work, we'll try something else. Dee says it has to look accidental. Car crash. Maybe you fall. R's been drinking more lately. Everyone would believe he just got careless." She wasn't giving up. The poisoned wine had been attempt number 1. There would be others. Robert closed the laptop and sat in the darkness of his workshop. Around him, the furniture he built stood like silent witnesses, solid, real. These were things created with his own hands. This was his life's work, his legacy, and Romy was trying to steal it all. Well, 2 could play that game. The confrontation came on a Thursday night. Romy was packing for another retreat, humming as she folded clothes into her overnight bag. Robert stood in the bedroom doorway, watching her, the USB drive burning like a coal in his pocket. "Going anywhere special?" "The same place in Virginia. I told you, she didn't look up from her packing. Funny thing, I called the retreat center in Virginia. The one you've mentioned before." Her hands stilled. "Oh, they've never heard of you." Silence stretched between them. Romy resumed packing, but the humming had stopped. "You could have saved us both time by just asking." "I'm asking now." She looked up then, and the mask was gone completely. The sweet, concerned wife had vanished, replaced by someone he barely recognized. Her green eyes were cold as winter. "I'm leaving you, Robert. I've been leaving you for months. For Dane Ashford." She didn't even flinch at the name. "So you know about Dane. Good. That makes this easier. Does it make attempted murder easier too?" Now she did react. Her face went pale, then flushed red. "Attempted murder. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious crime." Robert stepped into the room. "I have emails, Romy. I know what you planned." For a moment, she looked genuinely surprised. Then she smiled, and it was the most frightening thing he'd ever seen. "You read my private correspondence. How very like you, Robert. No respect for boundaries. You tried to poison me. Did I? That's not what the police think. They think you're a paranoid husband with anger issues." She zipped the bag closed with a sharp sound. "And that's what everyone else thinks too. You bought antifreeze, mixed it with the wine, pushed the glass toward me at dinner. Prove it." The words came out flat and certain. "Go ahead. Call the police. Tell them your estranged wife is plotting against you. See how seriously they take that." Robert realized she was right. He had emails proving an affair and vague references to after the wine, but nothing that would convince a prosecutor. "Not yet. You were always in the way," Romy continued, her voice conversational now. "From the beginning, Daddy wanted me to marry someone from our social circle, someone who could enhance the family business. Instead, I brought home a carpenter with dirt under his fingernails and dead family members. So why marry me at all? Because you were honest, genuine. Everything the men in my world weren't." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out that gets old fast. Genuine doesn't pay for vacations in Europe or fund our collections. Honest doesn't understand the importance of appearances, and Dane does. Dane has vision. He understands that money is just a tool, that influence is everything. Together, we could build something real with my money, my business, your business." Romy's voice rose. "You mean the one Daddy's friends funded, the clients he steered your way? You never could have succeeded without our family's help, Robert. You owe us everything." Robert felt something snap inside him. "I owe you nothing. You owe me 6 years of wasted life, 6 years of pretending to be something I'm not, playing house with a man who couldn't even protect his own brother from a drunk driver." The room went dead silent. Robert had never told Romy the details of Tom's accident, how the other driver had been drinking, how he'd run the red light going 60 in a 30 zone. She'd learned it some other way, stored it up like ammunition. "You're evil. I'm practical. You were supposed to be a temporary mistake, Robert, a phase, but you kept hanging on, kept trying to fix things that couldn't be fixed." She picked up her bag. "Well, tomorrow, everything changes. Daddy's calling the family together. He's going to present you with divorce papers and a very generous settlement offer. You'll sign them, take the money, and disappear. And if I don't," Romy paused at the bedroom door, "then we'll find another way to solve the problem. Dane's very creative." She left him standing there, surrounded by the remnants of their marriage. On the dresser sat their wedding photo, young faces full of hope and promise. Robert picked it up and let it drop to the floor. The glass shattered with a sound like breaking dreams. Friday afternoon arrived gray and cold. Robert sat in the Whitlow mansion's living room, surrounded by enemy territory. Delmont presided from his leather armchair, like a judge preparing to deliver sentence. Marlowe sat beside him, still pale from her ordeal, but alert. Romy perched on the sofa, playing with her wedding ring. "This is how it's going to work," Delmont began, sliding a thick folder across the coffee table. "You'll sign these papers. In return, you'll receive a settlement of $100,000 and a guarantee that we won't press charges for what you did to my wife." Robert didn't touch the folder. "What makes you think I want your money?" "Because the alternative is prison. Or worse." Delmont's eyes glittered. "You tried to kill my wife, son. That makes you a very dangerous man to have around." "I didn't try to kill anyone. The evidence suggests otherwise." "What evidence?" Delmont smiled. "Witnesses who saw you acting strange at dinner, your refusal to drink the wine, your history of mental health issues following your brother's tragic death." "I don't have mental health issues. You will by the time our lawyers are finished. Grief, depression, alcohol abuse. It all builds a very convincing picture." Robert looked around the room. These people had welcomed him into their family, shared holiday dinners with him, celebrated his wedding to their daughter. Now they sat there, planning his destruction with the casual efficiency of a business meeting, And if I don't sign, then things get unpleasant, Romy said softly. Is that another threat? It's reality. Delmont leaned forward. You have no friends left. No business. No future in this town. We can make your life so miserable you'll beg to leave. Or, Marlowe spoke for the first time. Her voice was weak, but determined. Something could happen to you. An accident. With your history of depression, no one would be surprised if you did something drastic. The casual way she said it, this woman whose life Robert had helped save, chilled him more than any direct threat. You people are sick. We're survivors, Delmont corrected. And right now, you're a threat to our survival. Sign the papers, Robert. Take the money and disappear. It's the smart play. Robert picked up the papers and flipped through them. Standard divorce documents, but with clauses that would strip him of any claim to property or assets. He'd leave the marriage with exactly what he brought to it. Nothing. I need time to think. You have until Sunday. Delmont stood. We're having a formal dinner that night. Family and close friends. You'll announce your decision then. And if I say no, then Sunday night will be the last time anyone sees you alive and healthy. The old man's voice was matter-of-fact. Good evening, Robert. As Robert left the mansion, he felt their eyes on his back. Once, he'd been part of this family, however uncomfortably. Now he was the enemy, and they'd made their intentions clear. But what they didn't know was that Robert had spent the last week making plans of his own. That night, he called Wyatt. I need your help with something. And I need you to bring Carmen and Harris Vettner. Carmen and Harris were friends of Wyatt's family, a retired couple who'd known Robert since before his marriage. More importantly, they were respected in the community, the kind of neutral witnesses whose word carried weight. Were you planning? Wyatt asked. I'm going to give them exactly what they want, Robert said. A formal dinner to remember. Sunday evening arrived crisp and clear. Robert stood at his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie with steady hands. Behind him, Romy sat at her vanity, applying lipstick with careful precision. She wore a vintage emerald bracelet he'd given her for their first anniversary, back when he'd still believed in their future. What she didn't know was that he'd modified it 3 days ago. Hidden inside the ornate setting was a tiny wireless microphone. Its signal was transmitting to a recorder in his jacket pocket. You look handsome, Romy said, meeting his eyes in the mirror, almost like the man I married. Thank you. It's too bad it has to end this way. In another life, we might have been happy. Robert said nothing. There was no point in pretending anymore. They drove to the Whitlow mansion in silence. The dining room had been set for 8, family plus Wyatt, Brindley, and Carmen and Harris Vettner. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier's light, and a mahogany table gleamed with fresh polish. Delmont wore his best suit, the one he saved for board meetings and funerals. Robert, good of you to join us, Delmont said. Wouldn't miss it. Marlowe looked better than she had in weeks, color returning to her cheeks. I hope you've had time to consider our offer. I have. As they took their seats, Robert noted the seating arrangement. He was again in the 4th chair, beside Brindley. Wyatt sat across from him. Carmen and Harris flanked Delmont at the head of the table. Everyone was positioned exactly as Robert had requested when he'd agreed to the dinner. Before we eat, Robert said, standing, I'd like to propose a toast. He lifted his water glass. He'd refused wine, claiming his stomach was upset. Around the table, the others raised their glasses with varying degrees of enthusiasm. To family, Robert began, his voice carrying clearly through the room. And all the poison we swallow to be a part of one. Romy's hand froze halfway to her lips. Her green eyes locked on his, sudden understanding flickering there. An interesting choice of words, Delmont said slowly. I thought so. Robert smiled. Now shall we eat? Dinner proceeded with careful politeness. The conversation was stilted, full of unspoken tension. Robert played his part perfectly. The defeated husband, making peace with the situation. He complimented Marlowe's recovery, asked Harris about his golf game, discussed business with Carmen. As the dessert course was cleared away, Delmont leaned back in his chair. "Well, Robert, have you reached a decision?" "I have." Robert stood again. "But first, I have something for everyone." He prepared 8 wine glasses beforehand, filling them with identical Burgundy. 7 contained excellent wine from Delmont's own cellar. The 8th held wine mixed with grape juice to dilute its appearance, making it slightly lighter in color. Robert carried the glasses on a silver tray, serving each person personally. When he reached Romy, he set her glass down with deliberate care. She looked at it, then at him, confusion clear on her face. "What's this about?" she asked. "A toast, a real one this time." Robert returned to his place and lifted his glass. As he did, he watched Romy carefully push her glass away from herself and closer to him. Everyone saw it. "Romy," Carmen Vintner's voice was puzzled. "Is something wrong with your wine?" Romy's face flushed. "I just am not drinking anymore. For health reasons." "Since when?" Marlowe asked. "Since." Romy looked around the table, realizing that everyone was staring at her. "Since I've been trying to be healthier." But her movement had been too obvious, too deliberate. Harris Vintner, a retired lawyer, was studying her with sharp eyes. "That's interesting," Robert said quietly, "because 3 weeks ago, you had no problem encouraging me to drink wine that smelled wrong." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What are you implying?" Delmont's voice was dangerous. "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." Robert reached into his jacket and produced a small device. "And I have proof." Robert pressed a button on the device. Romy's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "If he suspects the wine again, I'll have to be more subtle. Maybe switching glasses when he's not looking." Dane's voice responded. "Just be careful. We can't afford mistakes. Don't worry. After tonight, this whole charade will be over. He'll sign the papers, or he'll have an accident. Either way, I'll be free by next week." Silence stretched like a taut wire. Then Delmont exploded. "What is this? What the hell is this?" "It's your daughter's voice," Robert said calmly. "Recorded earlier this week." "That's impossible. Romy's been with family all week." "No, she hasn't." Robert looked directly at his wife. "She's been with Dane Ashford in Hendersonville, just like she has been every month for the past 8 months. Romy shot to her feet. "This is insane. You're having some kind of breakdown." "Am I?" Robert produced a folder from under his chair. "These are printouts of your emails. Should I read them all out?" "Those are stolen. After the wine, I'll have the house, the money, and freedom. Just need him gone." Robert read in a steady voice. "Your words, Romy, sent to Dane Ashford on March 28th, 2 days before the dinner where your mother was poisoned." Harris Vintner leaned forward. "Mr. Brennan, are you accusing your wife of attempted murder?" "I'm not accusing. I'm proving." Robert opened the folder wider. 8 months of correspondence. Plans to leave the marriage, take the money, and start a new life. And detailed discussions about making me disappear if I didn't cooperate. Carmen covered her mouth with her hand. "Romy, is this true?" "Of course, it's not true." But Romy's voice cracked. "He's sick. He's been paranoid and jealous." And the recording device crackled to life again. Romy's voice captured just 2 hours earlier as they dressed for dinner. "Tomorrow will be free. After tonight, there won't be anything left to worry about." Brinley spoke for the first time. "I gave him the emails." All eyes turned to her. She sat very straight, her face pale but determined. "I copied them from Romy's laptop. I couldn't stand by and watch this anymore." "You little bitch," Romy snarled. "All pretense of innocence gone. You jealous, bitter little—" "Romy." Delmont's voice cut through her tirade. His face had gone gray. "Stop talking. Right now." But it was too late. The mask had finally fallen completely. Why, I was already pulling out his phone, dialing 911. Carmen and Harris sat frozen, horrified witnesses to the family's destruction. You don't understand, Romy said desperately. He was ruining everything. Daddy, you said yourself he didn't belong here. He was dragging us down, embarrassing us. So you tried to kill him. Marlowe's voice was barely a whisper. It would have looked like an accident, a hard episode from drinking bad wine. No one would have questioned it. But you poisoned me instead. Romy's composure cracked completely. You weren't supposed to drink it. I told you not to, but you grabbed it anyway. After you pushed it toward Robert, Robert stood up slowly. I have one more thing. From his other pocket, he produced a signed document. A confession from Dane Ashford, when my friend Wyatt explained the situation to him, and the penalty for conspiracy to commit murder, he became very cooperative. Romy read the paper over his shoulder, her face going white. He betrayed me. No more than you betrayed everyone else. The police arrived 15 minutes later. Detective Monroe entered the dining room to find a tableau of destruction. Broken glasses, scattered papers, and a family torn apart by greed and murder. Romy sat slumped in her chair, all fight gone out of her. When Monroe read her rights, she didn't resist. She didn't speak at all, even when Delmont tried to take her hand. I don't understand, the old man kept saying. She's my daughter. She wouldn't, she couldn't. But the evidence was overwhelming. The emails, the recordings, Dane's confession, the witness testimony of 8 people who'd seen her push the poisoned wine toward Robert. Even Delmont's money and influence couldn't explain a way out. 25 to life, Monroe told Robert later. Attempted murder, conspiracy, endangering others. She won't see freedom for a long time. And Dane, 15 years for his part in the conspiracy. He's already agreed to testify against her in exchange for the reduced sentence. Robert nodded. Justice would be served, but it felt hollow somehow. 6 years of his life wasted on a woman who'd seen him as nothing more than an obstacle to her real desires. As the police car pulled away with Romy in the back seat, Delmont approached Robert on the front steps. I'm sorry, the old man said. I failed her, failed to see what she'd become. We all did. The offer still stands. The money, a fresh start somewhere else. No, Robert's voice was firm. I'm staying. This is my home. Delmont nodded sadly. For what it's worth, you're a better man than I gave you credit for. Keep your apologies. They won't bring back the 6 years she stole from me. Robert walked away from the Whitlow mansion for the last time, leaving behind a family destroyed by their own poisonous secrets. 6 months later, Robert stood in his new workshop, sunlight streaming through tall windows. The space was 3 times larger than his old garage, with room for multiple projects and a small showroom where clients could see his finished pieces. The business was thriving. The trial had brought him unexpected publicity. The carpenter who'd outsmarted his murderous wife became a local folk hero. Orders poured in from across North Carolina and beyond. Brennan Custom Furniture read the sign outside, with smaller text below. Built to last. Brennan knocked on the open door. Have a minute. She looked different, younger somehow. Her divorce from Romy's brother had been finalized last month, and she'd moved out of the Whitlow orbit entirely. What can I do for you? I wanted to let you know. I'm moving to Charleston next month, starting fresh. Good for you. Actually, I wanted to propose something. A partnership. I have some capital. You have the skills and reputation. Charleston's full of wealthy people who appreciate good craftsmanship. Robert considered the offer. Brinley had proven herself trustworthy when it mattered most. And Charleston was far enough from Asheville to truly start over. I'll think about it. There's no pressure. Just know the offer's there. After she left, Robert returned to his work on a dining table commissioned by a young couple in Black Mountain. As he shaped the cherry wood, his phone buzzed with a text from Wyatt. Saw the news. Romy's appeal was denied. She's going to serve the full sentence. Robert deleted the message without responding. Romy was the past. He buried that chapter of his life, the day she was convicted. The door chimed as another visitor entered. Carmen Vintner stood there, holding a wrapped package. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all. What can I do for you?" "Harris, and I wanted to give you this." She handed him the package. "A housewarming gift for your new workshop." Inside was a framed newspaper clipping. The front page story about Romy sentencing. The headline read, "Harris sentenced. Betrayal in Asheville." "I thought you might want to remember," Carmen said quietly. "What you survived, what you overcame." Robert studied the photo of Romy being led away in handcuffs. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The woman who'd once commanded every room she entered was just another criminal in an orange jumpsuit. "Thank you." After Carmen left, Robert hung the frame on the wall beside his workbench, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. He'd learned hard lessons about trust, about recognizing poison dressed as love, about the strength it took to stand alone against lies. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting everything in warm golden light. Robert picked up his tools and returned to work, shaping something beautiful from raw wood. Outside, life in Asheville continued. Dinners were shared, families gathered, and wine was poured without fear. And in his workshop, a man who'd been marked for death crafted furniture that would outlast the people who tried to destroy him. Each piece bore his signature, his story, his refusal to disappear. Robert Brennan had burned in the fire of betrayal and emerged stronger. Now he built things that would last forever. While his enemies counted years behind bars, the world had tried to erase him. Instead, he remained standing.